Good morning, everybody. Let's do introductions. Maricela, do you want to go first?
Sure. I think there's still people kind of trickling in, so I'll just stall for a few seconds. But as you guys get settled into our meeting, just wanted to give you a quick introduction. My name is Maricela Loza. I'm the department's undergraduate advisor as well as scheduler. So I help out with lots of questions regarding curriculum, classes, enrollment stuff, policies, and a lot of stuff in between. So I just wanted to introduce you guys. I look forward to working with you all to a much larger capacity during your time here. So thanks for coming.
And I'm Terry Johnson. I am the Vice Chair for Undergraduate Programs in the department. I teach a variety of courses, including BioE 10, which I'm assuming most of you have heard of or will be hearing of very, very soon. What I wanted to do is to give a very short presentation, just sort of orienting people to our program. And then leave it mostly open for questions. So if you have a question, you can ask it however you want. During the talk, feel free to throw it into the chat if you want, or simply to, after the chat, use the raise hand and we'll call on folks. So whatever works for you. So let's talk a little bit about bioengineering and the bioengineering program. I've been at Berkeley BioE since 2001, back when we had, I think it was 5 total faculty. And we're a very small department, primarily a PhD program that had just begun taking on undergraduate students. So we're now many more times that, approximately 26, and that's because we have a number of faculty that are half in other departments, around or approaching 500 undergraduates, 100 master's students, and 180 PhD students in what is the #2 public university in the world. According to the US News and World Report, we have the 7th worldwide undergraduate BioE program and the #4 PhD program. The PhD being, and one of our master's degrees being joint with UCSF. So what does it look like in terms of programs outside of the undergraduate program? So we have a variety of academic degrees. The graduate program is the PhD program. And like I said, these are students that go to work with medical faculty at UCSF and or Berkeley faculty as they're pursuing their PhD. Through the Fung Institute, we have a 1-year Masters of Engineering program that I would say a decent number of our undergraduates go to, although we have a number of students who had their undergraduate degrees elsewhere, and the Master of Translational Medicine program. This is a little more specific. It's very focused on the process of bench to bedside, so taking research and transforming it into product. And that one is also joint with UCSF. And currently run by one of the bioengineering professors at UCSF. So you will see students from these programs in your courses, probably not in the first year, but especially in the junior and senior years. In the senior year, you'll have an opportunity to take what we call mezzanine courses, which are shared between first-year PhDs and undergraduates, where the requirements for both are a little different. A typical example would be on the undergraduate side of things, you might be doing a paper review based in your discipline, while the graduate students are actually working on a research proposal. So our undergraduate degree is split into a variety of concentrations, and these are really there to help you decide what you want to prepare for, but they're all set up to have the same courses during the first semester. And practically, it's certainly possible to make the choice of concentration, usually by the end of the second, depending on if you have a lot of AP credit, the end of the 3rd semester. So we have cell and tissue engineering. This is a popular choice for pre-meds. Most of our pre-med students choose this. Although I do want to emphasize, you can go to medical school with any concentration. Simply, you need to make sure that you have the medical school prerequisites. And as a matter of fact, medical schools routinely take folks from the humanities that have also taken the prerequisites. Biomedical devices. So cell and tissue engineering is there in the name. It's usually creating some sort of implant that very specifically interacts with cells and tissues in the body. A lot of implantables, though not necessarily all implantables. Biomedical devices is a little more broad and a little more physics-based, whereas cell and tissue engineering is more chemistry-based. Most diagnostics would go into biomedical devices. Most devices that function outside of the body would be biomedical devices. There's a little bit of overlap between the two, but that's pretty normal. And we'll talk a little bit more about that as well. Synthetic and computational biology. This is basically re-engineering cells, yeast, bacteria, etc., to do stuff. Some of these have medical purposes, but a lot of synthetic and computational biology is focused on production. Like basically creating large scale production of things that we need, drugs or commodity chemicals, so that you can move away from the non-renewable source. Most chemicals right now come from oil and doing chemistry on the oil, which requires burning the oil to heat up the oil to do chemistry on it. Whereas synthetic and computational biology wants to replace that with basically, bacteria or yeast that make the thing that you want by eating biomass, which is generated by sunlight. And biomedical imaging. So biomedical imaging, you'll notice we kind of went chemistry, physics, chemistry, physics. All of these both need both chemistry and physics, but biomedical devices and biomedical imaging tend to be more physics focused. Cell and tissue engineering and synthetic and computational biology tend to be more chemistry focused. Biomedical imaging, we have a very strong research program in MRI, using creating new technologies based on MRI that do things that MRI currently cannot, so that we can move away from radio sources. Being able to do something like an angiogram, which is normally something you would do by exposing people to radiation, with an MRI, which doesn't, or being able to diagnose things faster, more cheaply, and earlier via MRI than we can currently do. So these are the four concentrations. These are broadly reflective of the research areas that we have in the department. We also have a joint degree in biomaterials with MSc. So this is a different undergraduate degree, although it will look vaguely similar to the bioengineering degree, but it's actually a mix of biomaterials, the material science courses that would be relevant to someone in biomaterials, and the bioengineering courses. Declaring a concentration is really just following the concentration, but the joint degree would be entering a different degree program. But that can be done, and there's tons of details online about when to make that decision. It's soon-ish, but certainly not now. Okay. If you're worried about making these decisions, note that it's going to be a little bit before you need to. This is not an immediate decision that you need to make. And there will be a variety of courses, specifically BioE 10, 26, and 25. Also a variety of student events and department events that will help you to make this choice. So BioE 10, we are going to deeply explore a single device that is relevant to each of the four concentrations. In 26, you'll learn a lot about academic bioengineering, so what people are doing in their labs here. And then next semester in BioE 25, you will learn about industrial bioengineering, so what people do working in industry. So you'll be able to take those perspectives and sort of decide what concentration is the right one for you. So our curriculum. In the first semester, I leave one blank because you might be taking a humanities or social studies course. Basically, we try and leave it so that your semesters are 3 technicals. Those of you who are historians of our curriculum, which should be none of you, I wouldn't expect it. But we recently changed the curriculum several years ago, which used to have like a 4 technical semester in the first year. You don't have to do that. No one should have to do that. So you'll be taking BioE 10, Math 1A, Chem 1A, and 1AL. That's the typical one. If you have AP for some of these, you're just going to sub in another course. Second semester, math and physics and chem. Third semester, programming, math, and physics. So again, I want to emphasize, this is just the suggestion. If, for example, you've taken one of these already at a community college, you've got AP credit, there will be opportunities to get advice on how to sub those things in. But generally, you want to get your math, your physics, and your chemistry settled as soon as possible. Just because I'm seeing it here, taking BioE 26, you want to take BioE 26 and 25 in your first year, if at all possible. They're 1-unit courses. You know, they're not homework style courses, they're seminar style courses. So the workload is not intense. They're really there so that you can learn about what different people do through this discipline. And in your 4th semester, there's Math 54, finishing off math, and BioE 11. Everybody will take BioE 11, which is Engineering Molecules 1. Now, Engineering Molecules 1 is basically leaping off of Chem 3A, 3AL, which is organic chemistry. But we noticed years ago that there was kind of this difficulty that you would take a biology class, which would be talking about organisms and organs and networks, and then a chemistry class, and then you would go farther down in that. And there really was no synthesis that made you realize that all of these complex behaviors in animals and cells are really just emergent behaviors of chemistry when you have lots of chemicals doing different things all at the same time, very often separated in space and time. So we wanted to build directly off of the chemistry and build complexity, right? So, if Chem 3A is, this is what happens when chemical A and chemical B come together. My original background is chemical engineering, which makes me a bad chemist. So all chemicals are A and B to me. I'm used to doing more math than chemistry with them. But the idea is that once you start building up and go, well, what if you have 5 chemicals? And what if you have 12 chemicals and they're arranged like this and they're separated like this? Then you start seeing how organelles in cells appear and how complex behaviors in cells are really just due to the math, physics, and chemistry that comes in. So BioE 11 is a beginning point for that. People that are interested in synthetic and computational biology or cell and tissue engineering, more chemistry-based, will go on to take Engineering Molecules 2, which is the beginning of the thermodynamics of biological molecules, some of the things that you would need to know to computationally design biological chemicals or to think about that, and really connect math to complex biological behavior. You also take a fundamental. So fundamentals are junior year courses that just depend on your concentration. If you're doing medical devices, for example, you would definitely take my class, BioE 104, because there's a lot of transport, diffusion, and convection and reaction on many diagnostics. So understanding that would be really important. But you would take a different fundamental potentially and you would also take 104 if you were cell and tissue engineering. Because the thing about organs is they need to eat. So oxygen needs to get into them and waste products need to get out of them. And the same math and physics describes that. You may then move on once we've talked about the emerging behaviors of these connected networks to engineering cells. So how do you start engineering cells? Now, you may instead be working on the more physics end of things. So if you're interested in medical devices or biomedical imaging, you would take engineering devices 1, which talks about how you build a device, the electronics that you would use, how you interpret signals that come off of those electronics. And then BioE 101, where you would start building some of those devices. And I'm not going to talk about the senior year because the senior year is very often up to you. A lot of people are doing research in the senior year, so which we strongly encourage. Most of our students do undergraduate research for multiple semesters. And taking electives that are of interest and sort of round out what you want to do next. So these are our faculty. I think I've updated this. If I've forgotten anyone, I apologize. Most of these folks, you could, if you read their webpage, you would connect them to one or more of our concentrations pretty clearly. And many of them bridge concentrations. Many people who work in cell and tissue engineering are also working in medical devices. Many people that are working in biomedical imaging are also working in medical devices. There's increasingly an overlap between cell engineering and synthetic biology. So many of these people would be interested in having an undergraduate in their lab who is, doing things in a variety of different concentrations. Really depends on the projects that they're working on. These are our emeritus or retired faculty. The fun thing about being a faculty, you never stop being a professor. You just become an emeritus professor. Our adjunct and affiliated folks, people in other departments on campus and on the UCSF campus that have appointments with us as well, and our teaching faculty. So I'm going to talk a little bit about their work, and I always like to apologize. This data is really old, but it's still pretty good. I don't think it's changed significantly. The reason why it's old is that we have a departmental review every 9 years, and it's hard to get all of this data. So we usually update it every 9 years. Back the last time we had a departmental review, every year we were spending around $35 million on research, which is the highest per faculty at the time in the College of Engineering. We have had at the time 72 active US patents and 23 licenses, something we'll talk about in BioE 10. The median number of licensings that a patent gets is 0. Most patents are never licensed for any purpose. So that particular ratio is really fantastic. It means that it's not just, patenting to pad out a resume. It is, patenting with a deliberate desire to form a startup around this, to get funding around the idea, and to turn it into a product. And it's a very, research is central to the mission of the faculty. Like we're now publishing well over 140 papers a year. And when you consider the number of faculty that we're talking about, then, and the fact that some of these disciplines tend to publish less than others, they tend to do big papers rather than many small papers. It's an excellent record, and there's opportunities for undergraduates to be part of that. Our staff. So the BioE staff, of which Maricela is a part, is very good. We are blessed to have staff on campus that have been on campus for a long time. They know the campus well. They can help you when there is a circumstance that is unusual. The sort of thing when I started where I would just go, I have absolutely no idea how you would even approach dealing with this problem. They've dealt with it 12 times before. They know exactly who to call. So if you are having an issue, keep in mind that there are things that we can do, right? But we can't do unless you let us know that you're having the issue. I wish that there was a computational system that would just flag when there was some administrative problem with a student. Oftentimes that email just goes to you, and we want to help and we can help. So don't be shy reaching out. Maricela here is available for undergraduate advising. Sorry. And this is her email. I think if you go onto the bioengineering webpage, it's also very easy to find. I have office hours. All of the office hours for faculty are available on the webpage as well. So if you want to talk to me, or if you want to talk to another faculty member just because you're interested in their research or what they do or what their perspective is, keep in mind that those office hours are available to you. The only thing we usually ask is if it's the office hours right before midterms and you come in and it's real full, just like come back next week, but you are absolutely welcome to jump into office hours to ask questions that have nothing to do with the class, right? Okay, just talk a little bit, sorry, my computer is a little slow here, about your future. This is from one of our previous samples, just asking students what they wanted to do. And this was pretty much what we expected. It's around a fifth of our students go on to medical school. We actually send the third most students to medical school in terms of departments on the Berkeley campus, behind molecular and cell biology and integrative biology. So bioengineering is number 3. Academic career is a little over 10%, but around 50 want to work in biotech or medtech, which is kind of what we expect. The other and unsure, very often that might be someone that will go to get a law degree afterwards to work in technical law. We have a number of graduates that have done that. Maybe someone's going to work for a nonprofit for a couple of years. Maybe someone's going to start a nonprofit. Maybe someone's going to do Teach for America for a few years, but there are a variety of potential options. So just talking a little bit about the future, and this is more just like cool stuff. So Berkeley by engineers named to 30 under 30. One of the parts I like about my job is whenever they do those like 30 under 30, change makers, people that are doing this, I'll go, oh, he was my GSI. Oh, yeah, she was in my class. Here we have Tim, who was my GSI, I think twice, who now is faculty and comes back to campus to give talks, invited talks. We have faculties and co-founders, 7 Berkeley engineers among the 35 top innovators. We have CEOs of startups that came from our graduate program. This is Bolt Threads. If you haven't heard of it, they are making basically clothing out of spider silk. If you, I am remote this semester, but when that is not true in my office, I have one of the first 50 ties that they made out of spider silk on my wall. I think it's number 33. But basically, they're also now making leather from mushrooms, so sustainable leather from mushrooms. You'll notice the number on that jacket, that's employee number. So that was the 24th employee hired into the company. And that was, this is one of the spider silk ties. And this is their CTO, their chief technical officer, who I remember coming to finding out I was doing a transport class and working on a computational model of an artificial spider spinneret. So basically how to make a microfluidic device that would fire out spider silk. And he also, in the very early parts of this research, would go into the greenery on campus around Memorial Glade to catch spiders when this was just an idea that he had that he wanted to explore. And now he is CTO. He is also an advisor for a company that may be in the future applying a patent that I'm on. So it's this is the kind of stuff that is fun about Berkeley bioengineering, is that this will be your cohort. Like the students in this group are going to go off and do interesting things. Potentially you will hire some of them, or they will hire some of you, or both of those will happen. And that's one of many reasons why even in this, sort of getting back to campus, there is some remote aspects to courses. It's really important to get to know the other students in your cohort. They are going to be the champions of your ideas, and you are going to help champion the best of their ideas. We also have had people who have both on and off campus, graduates of campus and faculty, working on COVID. This is basically the first home COVID diagnostic from Lucira Health. That came from Deb Mitra, John Waldenstein, and Frankie Myers, all of whom are graduates of the department. This is a company that the top two founded and Frankie was working for. This is a map, a genome map of what's going on with mutations in COVID in Berkeley. And this is based on work that our faculty have done. Getting together very quickly to turn the first floor of one of the synthetic biology buildings into a sequencing lab for COVID tests early in the pandemic, and using this to identify potential emerging variants. And this is something that you can do with the background that you gain in bioengineering. So this is our community. These are all the people that we work with. The Comp Bio group, the Biophysics group, the rest of the College of Engineering, the Division of Biological Sciences, the College of Chemistry and Chemical Engineering. We have tight connections with UCSF through our degrees and a variety of research interests, the Chan Zuckerberg BioHub, Lawrence Berkeley National Lab, Stanford. This is by no means all of the connections, but these are some of the closest connections that we have, people that we do research with and partner with. And I want to thank you. If anybody has any questions right now, I'm going to unshare this. Feel free. I'm going to start on the questions in the chat, but do the raise hand if you have a question, and I will call on you after I've done a couple of those. I would also ask if you have a question to go cameras on, just because that's helpful for me in answering it. So give me just one moment here. What's the class that's more of a seminar or discussion for BioE? Those are the BioE 26 and 25 seminars. So 26 is a fall seminar, 1-unit seminar. 25 is a spring 1-unit seminar. The one in the fall, 26, you'll be hearing talks from academics. In 25, you'll be hearing from people in industry. What are some of the ways we can interact with UCSF as an undergrad? Do undergraduate research there. You can do undergraduate research with a faculty member who works with people at UCSF, which is not uncommon. I'd say about half of our faculty members probably have some ongoing research connection with faculty at UCSF. Trying to think if are there any other pathways, Maricela, that you would suggest?
For research, URAP. URAP is also very popular, if that wasn't already mentioned.
Also LBNL has some research programs.
There you go.
And very often those are joint with medical folks, like more on the nuclear medicine, I think, last time I checked at least. It's mostly through research, I would say, because UCSF does not have an undergraduate program. Can certain parts and concentrations of the BioE program involve environmental aspects? This is a timely question. The answer is absolutely. I would argue, okay, I'm going to make a statement, and I expect you to go, come on, but I think I can justify it. I would say all of our concentrations actually have important environmental aspects. So I'll tell you why. First off, number one, synthetic and computational biology is about making stuff sustainably, right? And people need stuff. That's not a need that's going away. One of the projects that I worked on with undergraduates several years ago was making blue gene dye from bacteria and yeast, which is currently a petroleum product. And that may seem like, like, what's the environmental impact? We make around 2 to 3 billion with a B pairs of blue jeans a year. So it's around 40,000 tons of indigo dye. It's a large scale commodity chemical. And being able to shift some of that chemical production away from petroleum is really important. There's also some other environmental aspect of using biological dyeing techniques that can reduce waste. So, synthetic and computational biology has a lot of opportunities there. Carbon sequestration, understanding the sort of biome of various places, doing bioremediation of waste sites. But I would also say, even though our other three, cell and tissue engineering, biomedical devices and biomedical imaging, are really more on the medical side, the reality is that we have an aging population. We pay a lot for healthcare. And it's not just paying a lot of resources are devoted to healthcare. And that amount of resource is going to continue to go up and up and up. One of the sort of introductory cases, for example, biomedical devices, would be portable diagnostics that don't need you to go to a hospital, right? The open case for that is where there are no hospitals, like if you don't have a choice. But the reality is, going to the hospital involves burning gas to go to the hospital, transporting goods to the hospital. It's not necessarily the most efficient thing to do for every medical need. We also want to make healthcare better and cheaper. One way to do that is with early diagnostics. Like, if you have early diagnostics, the amount of effort that you need to care for an injury or a disease, it's harder and harder the farther and farther along it is when you catch the disease. So when you have an aging population that is going to get sick, like, age comes with it problems, being able to diagnose medical devices and biomedical imaging, be able to diagnose that faster so that people are healthier, and being able to treat, for example, cell and tissue engineering. Dialysis is hard on everybody, right? It's hard on the people that are doing it. It requires a tremendous amount of resource, and you just have to keep on it until your life ends or you get a transplant. So being able to produce transplants is a way, it is a more environmentally friendly medical solution in the long term. Keeping people healthy is important. Also, with climate change, we're going to have emerging diseases. We're going to have health problems that are new, and we're going to have to meet those needs. So I think that there are contributions that are associated with climate change that bioengineers can make. Having said that, other engineers do fantastic work around climate change as well. Mechanical engineering and green power, right? And green buildings, civil engineering for green buildings, electrical engineering for solar power. Like, we're not the only ones with skin in this game, but those are the sorts of things that I would be thinking about if that is something that is important to you, which it should be. Junior transfers get 5 semesters to complete their degree. Do study abroad semesters count toward that 5? Maricela, yeah.
I went in and answered that directly, but I'll let everybody know that those summer semesters do not count in your average lifetime as an undergraduate. Summer is kind of seen as a bonus semester. It's not required. So if that's a time that students want to enroll in classes to kind of help keep them on track or even get them ahead, sometimes even work on a minor, but that's a little off topic. Summer is like a good place to take advantage of picking up some additional units without burning you out during the fall and or spring.
Study abroad, by the way, during fall and spring, if that's what you're interested in. We can check on this, but very often we're able to set you up so that you meet requirements during your semester abroad. We'll help you choose classes at the place that you're going that will count for classes at Berkeley.
Yeah, ESS has a really good collection of classes that have already been approved to transfer into your major. So I tell folks a lot of times that advising at UC Berkeley, your undergraduate experience, it really takes a village. So both Terry and I will work together with you and your ESS advisor to make sure that you're picking out classes that keep you on track with your degree.
There's a couple of DMs. One are BioE 26 and BioE 10 in person this semester. BioE 26 is remote. BioE 10, the lecture is remote. Most of the discussions are in person, although we have a couple of remote discussion sections for folks that just can't come back to campus for, visa reasons, for example. BioE 10 partially in person, BioE 26 is fully remote. And that's based on the campus set a 200 max, everything over 200 students is remote. I'm a junior transfer, have taken a class that satisfies E7 already. Is there still value in taking CS61A in the fall? So it's a little hard to say. If you were really interested in like computational biology, like that was a direction that you were moving in, I would say it's good to know Python. And I would probably suggest you may be comfortable with it from other experiences. Just go to their website for CS61A, look at some of the homeworks. If it kind of makes sense to you, don't worry about it. If that's the only programming course you're going to take is E7, and you're not particularly interested in taking a lot of programming heavy courses later on, which is not unusual for like cell and tissue, I would say no worries. You've satisfied E7, you should be in good shape. It kind of depends on what your interests are. But if you're not sure, I would say maybe don't take CS61A in the fall. You could always take it in a later semester if you decide to move more in a programming heavy route. Would nanotechnology fall under cell and tissue engineering? It's all nanotechnology. Nanotechnology was a word that we used in the late 1990s to get grant money. So nanotech is about manipulating things at the molecular level. Synthetic biology is all about creating biological systems that do that. Cell and tissue engineering is about creating custom molecules to interact with cells in a very particular way. Much of the some of the work in MRI right now is related to magnetic nanospheres, which is just very small magnets. Likewise, a lot of the sort of diagnostic work that happens in medical devices would involve molecular interactions. So all of these involve nanotechnology in some respect. The sort of classic sci-fi nanotech is more synthetic biology. If you've heard when nanotech was real scary, they talked about the gray goo scenario, which is we build nanotech that makes more nanotech, and that nanotech takes over the planet, and the planet just becomes gray goo. Like in bioengineering, we've always been like, that already happened. There's bacteria everywhere. Like we're living in that one, right? Like we are the gray goo. It is biology. The differences between the different concentrations. Very briefly, the more physics heavy ones are biomedical devices, which tends to be diagnostics. Often a lot of people working on very small diagnostics. So how do you diagnose whether someone has a chemical in their blood or in their saliva or in their urine? How do you use visual information to diagnose? Biomedical devices tends to be MRI, biomedical imaging very focused on MRI. So it's like a subset, a very specific subset of biomedical devices. How do you use MRI as a technology to diagnose more and more things? Cell and tissue engineering and synthetic and computational biology tend to be more chemistry based. Cell and tissue engineering, mostly implants. Put something in the body that integrates with the body in a way that it cures something, right? Synthetic and computational biology, making stuff with biology. How do you use bacteria and yeast or mammalian cells to produce a drug or a chemical that we need? If I'm also interested in neuroscience, oh, sorry, I skipped one. How many units do you recommend for the first semester? Also, how difficult is it to study abroad during the year in BioE? It's not difficult. I mean, first year I would not do it, but in fact, I don't think you're allowed to do it. But we have a number, I think we probably have, I'm gonna say 3 or 4 a year. Does that sound reasonable, Maricela?
That
That's just based on
does.
interest.
Yeah.
And how many units do you recommend for the first semester? 3 technicals, 1 non-technical. That's just a general good rule. Part of what you're going to want to do this semester is just learn how to college. Mm-hmm. And you don't get units for that, but it's real important. And I'll actually take an opportunity here, just as like a warning. Okay, I have a student at the end of their first or sometime in their second semester, and they tell me my freshman year is not going well. I'm not happy with how things are going. I ask them questions, and 90% of the time it goes like this. So, okay, I get the information, they're getting this grade, this happened, etc. So are you working with other people? And they go, well, I was working with other people, and then I fell behind. And they don't say this, but what they mean is, and then I got ashamed. So I stopped working with other people, which is like playing Berkeley as a video game and choosing the extreme level, right? Berkeley is meant to be played cooperatively. And you are really doing yourself a disservice when you don't work with other people. And do not worry, I guarantee you, sometimes you will go down to the table of the people that you work with, and you will be the person that is the most behind. But it's not always for every class, right? So sometimes you're giving more than you get, and sometimes you're doing the opposite, and that's also fine. There's also value in sitting down in a group, even if you feel like you're behind, and just asking people stuff, because often the people who think that they are ahead, the questions that you ask reveal that they're not as far ahead as they thought they were. They learn from having conversations about what they don't yet understand. It's very difficult to surface what you don't get unless you talk with other people. I will tell you, when you take my classes, man, it's going to sound like it all totally makes sense, because I'm doing it, and I've been doing this for 24 years. And it really makes sense to me. So all the confusing stuff I leave behind on the cutting room floor, it's going to be super fluent. It's going to sound like, oh, yeah, I got out of that class. I got it. I understand it, because there was just a sense of understanding. But that's because I can only say so much in 50 or 80 minutes, right? And you only realize the subtleties when you work through things like problem sets and projects with other human beings, and you're just honest, like, I don't get this. What about this? Why isn't this a problem? What about when this goes up? Does this go down? Those are the sorts of conversations you want to have. You also need to learn how other people approach problems. I approach problems in a very particular way that's individual. And I learn a lot. I add to my toolkit by looking at how other people think about problems. Like there might be there's one problem set in BioE 10. I know that everybody who's taking that class is going to sit down and go, okay, I understand this part. And someone else is going to go, I didn't understand that part at all, but now it makes sense, but I understand the next part. And it is a collaborative structure for parts of this are not fitting in my head yet. Collectively, do we have all of the jigsaw pieces that we can get to the end of this? So keep that in mind. Like, a lot of what you're going to be doing is Google calendaring, right? I'm going to work with other people in this class. I'm going to have a study group. I'm going to meet with people on a regular basis, consistently. I'm also going to Google Calendar exercise, and if necessary, sleep, and all those other things. One last thing on this, there will be a temptation. You're all very good at high school problems because you're here. You're all very good at them. These are going to be different, not night and day different, right? It's not like we're speaking an entirely different language, but there is a fundamental shift in the kinds of problems that you'll be solving. The temptation will be, oh, the way I approached high school, it's not working. So I'll do it 3 times as hard. Will not work. There will come a time where you actually have to put in time to think about how you're approaching things. And it feels like it's wasted time. I'm not studying, I'm not reading, I'm thinking about how to think about. And you will need to do that because the folks who do what's not working, but they do more of it, are not going to get as much out of it as the folks who are constantly looking at their workflow. How am I approaching this? Is that working, right? Like, you can, there have been studies, you can highlight texts 20 hours a day. Does not help, right? It's a lot of work, and your eyes will feel like they're bleeding at the end of it, but there are more effective ways to approach what you're doing. If I'm also interested in neuroscience, should I take some cognitive science classes, or will the BioE classes somewhat cover neuroscience and related diagnostic devices? I'd say, take some neuroscience courses. MCB has a variety of them. Talk to one of our neuroscience affiliated profs. I'm probably not the best person to talk to about that, but Dr. Yarvitz is. And it would sort of depend, like there's neuroscience in terms of, he studies individual neuronal activity through biomedical devices. But then there are also a lot of neuroscience that's done via MRI. So in that direction, you might want to talk to Steve Connolly or Muriel Vansberger, but there are options. And certainly people do take classes outside of the department. Are we required to eventually declare a concentration? No. But here is why I would take the concentration seriously. Otherwise, you get to your senior year and you go, I really want to take that. Oh, no, I don't have the prereqs. Oh, oh, no, I can't take that either. Oh, but yeah. And then one of 2 things happens. You don't take courses that you want to take, or you do, and you get hammered in your senior year because you don't have what you need to start off in those courses. They're really there to help. If for example, you take 3 years of synthetic and computational biology, and then you jump whole hog into biomedical imaging without looking at the prereqs, there will be trouble, right? But having said that, if you're interested in 2 different concentrations and you work out the prereq chains, right, and go, oh yeah, I should be able to take this and that and this and that and this and that, you can absolutely do that. That's totally fine. Just be careful that you don't dig yourself a hole is the main advice. And the advisors can help with those sorts of decisions. I know on the website, there's a 4-year plan. Is there one that includes med school prereqs, or should you take those classes over the summer? So the cell and tissue engineering, many of the concentrations have totally open electives. You can use those for your med school. So if you go to the cell and tissue concentration, it has totally open courses in some of the semesters. And that's sort of designed both, so that we don't overload you with a bunch of stuff, but also so that if you wanted to take your med school prereqs, it might not cover all of them. You might want to still take a course in the summers, but they're designed to be a little bit of flexibility there.
just added that link from the Career Center into the chat if anyone is interested in looking more into those details.
Yeah. So a note about med school, if you haven't heard this already, when we talk about the med school requirements, there are no med school requirements. Every med school has their own requirements. But what the Career Center has published covers most of them, right? So I do urge folks, if you are interested in a very particular medical school, to go to their website and see if they have any kind of strange requirements or unusual requirements. But the med school prereqs that the Career Center posts will cover you for pretty much all of the medical schools. And the Career Center also communicates with medical schools to like let them know this class should meet this and this class should meet this. So it also note that the courses that they highlight on the Career Center's webpage are courses that our Career Center talks to med schools about. There are a certain number of units we have to take each semester to be on track to pursue a concentration. Not really. You just want to, fulfill the primary courses that are in the concentration. The electives are usually more elective, so if there's a long electives list, it means you don't have to take any particular one of those or even any of those if you don't have room for it. But if there's a single course on the concentration or like two courses, like take this or this, that usually means this is pretty central to the concentration. I think I'm caught up on the chat. Does anybody have any raise hand questions?
We got a quiet crowd today. No, none.
Is there tutoring for BioE10 and do you have office hours? We all have office hours. And the office hours, I don't think the web page is up yet, Maricela, but when—
Not yet. We're trying to gather everyone's office hours and then we'll publish it onto our website. I'm going to try and find the link right now and insert it in the chat so you guys could refer back to it later on in a few weeks once we get everybody's info together.
And give me 1 second. I am just going to see if I can answer the other part of that question.
Don't be intimidated by all these empty slots. I think a lot of faculty are also figuring out how they want to host their office hours in the fall. So that's why it looks so blank right now.
So this will be of interest. It does not specifically have academic support for BioE10, but Engineering Student Services has a variety of like study sessions available for a lot of courses that BioEs do take. Vivian.
Hi, I just have a question in regards to pursuing like a joint degree with material science and engineering. And I was just wondering, like, should I be going to the material science and engineering stuff like right now, or should I just stay under like bioengineering and then figure it out later, if that makes sense?
I would make an appointment with Maricela to go over the process of declaring for the joint major. And it's going to be about, I'm going to take a couple of courses, maintain a GPA, and then in this semester declare to enter that. But that's probably, it's a little more complex because you're moving majors, but within the College of Engineering. So it's probably easier to do just via an appointment.
I see. Thank you.
No problem. would I recommend using AP credits to skip bioengineering or pre-med requirements? It's a good question. There's actually sort of two parts to that, to skip bioengineering requirements. What I strongly encourage people to do, because most of these classes have web pages, if you don't need to take Physics 7a, go to the Physics 7b webpage. Look up some homeworks for previous semesters. If it looks like elvish to you, step back and take 7a, right? But if you look at it and go, oh no, okay, yeah, I mean, I understand kind of where they're coming from. The same thing with math, right? Like if you don't need to take 1A and 1B, look at the web pages for 1A and 1B, and don't worry if you don't understand every single thing in the course, because even calculus is taught slightly differently in different places. But if you're largely comfortable with the material, having seen that, go for it, right? If you're worried, then you may want to take the course even though you don't have to. I'm generally for taking the AP credit. I will say this, many people use their AP credit on math. A few people that don't need to take Physics 7a take it anyway. And that's just historical knowledge, certainly not required or anything like that. In terms of pre-med requirements, okay, here's the reality. I cannot, I wish I could see in the future and go, your particular medical school that you want to go to will not care whether you took it at a community college or not, right? Most of the time it makes absolutely no difference, right? Pre-meds or medical schools will sometimes say that they want you to take the class even if you have AP credits. I think that there's much less of a difference whether you take it at Berkeley or not. Like it's just if you have it on your transcript. So if you want to take summer classes at home to take the pre-med requirements and do that at a community college, I would not personally worry about that. I hesitate to be very sure here because every med school is different, right? Just in how they do things. My expectation based on the students that we've had is that there's no problem pretty much all of the time taking a community college class instead of taking a class at Berkeley for like Bio 1A, the pre-med requirements. With the AP units, I honestly don't know. And yeah, I wish I could be more specific, but I really can't. I hope that's at least somewhat helpful. Which concentration would be best if we want to do biomedical engineering in the future? Any, depends on what, right? If you want to work on implants, cell and tissue engineering, right? If you want to work on diagnostics, medical devices, or biomedical imaging, I mean, all of these are biomedical engineering areas. It's just preparing you for slightly different kinds of jobs. Previous web pages for, where do we find previous web pages for classes? I would Google, many of them will have a non-B course page. Like I know CS 61A, most of the CS courses just have a web page where you can see the syllabi for, previous semesters and many of the homeworks.
I would also add that you should check the guide and the course catalog for any potential courses, just because more of the information regarding like course details, descriptions, and prerequisites are also documented fairly easily on that on the course catalog. So also use that.
I think we're caught up.
Did you answer the question about what clubs are best to join for the major or intended concentration, including BMES?
Oh, I apologize. I missed that one. Okay, so Biomedical Engineering Society is the largest club with the highest proportion of bioengineers, although there are folks from other engineering disciplines, integrated biology, MCB. So I would say that's sort of our flagship club. The Bioengineering Honor Society tends to do more academic events where BMES is focused on professional development events. We have a very active Society of Women Engineers chapter on the campus. Tau Beta Pi. There's also a variety of groups that are very project oriented. Pi, Pioneers in Engineering, runs a robot contest for Bay Area high schools. Enable Tech builds prosthetics for kids in the Bay Area using 3D printing. What am I missing? I would say those are many of the largest ones.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, I think there may be a list. I'm gonna.
College of Engineering is also going to have like a big clubs kind of centered event this week. So I would also encourage you to go attend that so that you can learn more about the clubs, not just within BioE, but across the college as well.
Also the BESA, Black Engineering and Science Student Association I'm forgetting which is the largest here, but I'm just going to add this list. Couple of new questions. And if I miss one, just let me know. Just feel free to reach at me. If I'm not taking Chem 1A this semester, should I use my AP credit to skip to Chem 3A next semester? Or is Chem 1A important to take? I think it's the same answer, right? Is to look at the material in Chem 1A. And if you're familiar with a good portion of it from your previous work, then you're good. Don't worry about it. But if you look at the Chem 1A and a large proportion of that material looks completely new to you, I think then that's when it's probably best to take it. Maricela just answered the where will this be?
Not sure yet.
Wait, yeah. When can we declare a minor and take classes for that minor? So that's an easy question for me to answer. Depends totally on who's giving you the minor. That's totally up to them. So if you want to get a minor in music, you've got to go to the music department's website and see what their policies are for declaring a minor. They're all fairly similar. But like some are going to say by this semester or another semester, some are going to say they want you to take a certain number of courses. Everybody sort of chooses what their requirements are for a minor and how and when you declare. So having said that, I will offer this advice. Don't get caught up in getting a minor. Start taking the classes, and if you really enjoy the classes and there's stuff that you want to learn and you just get a minor by doing that, fantastic, right? But we have had students that take like 3 courses for a minor and then they go, I just have to take 3 more courses so I can like ruin my senior year by being totally overloaded to get a minor. And I just always want to tell them, just don't. If you're not passionate about those 3 courses, just don't do it. A minor is like a little line on your transcript. And according to studies, having a minor does not make a difference most of the time, right? You should not pursue a minor, pursue instead courses of interest in an area that you really want to take. And if you accidentally get a minor along the way, great. But don't worry too much about chasing minors in general. What do you suggest in terms of internships for students? Discovering them, picking which one is best, etc. So there are plenty of internship opportunities. We'll have events on campus that will sort of link you with local companies. Most companies do internships where they run the internship. So they announce it, they take applications and they run it. And what we do is when these emails usually come from Pam, but sometimes Maricela, we'll email all of you and go, hey, we've got word that these companies are running an internship cycle. And then you're going to go through the application process. In terms of picking which one is best, I think it's very hard to tell early in your career which one is going to be best. So just apply to several. And if you get multiple yeses, then choose the one that is most interesting to you, right? Here's the trick about trying to ruthlessly optimize your experience. And this should be terrifying, but it will also be freeing. Every decision that you make at Berkeley, you will never know whether or not it was the right one. To use the video game analogy, you will never go to the end of the level and it'll go, you got 88% of the secrets, right? It's not going to happen. The reality is that you're just going to have to make decisions based on what you know and adjust. You might choose what you think is the best thing. You're going to do it for 3 months and you're going to go, I don't want to do that anymore. And that's great. You learned something. You're going to use that information to make better decisions in the future. But in terms of like picking which one is best, to a certain extent, you're going to roll the dice. You're going to go, I think this is the best one. And I just need to course correct as necessary as I move forward in my career. Usually when people have an advising meeting with me about which of these internships should I choose, 97.49% of the time, it's clear talking to them for 2 minutes that they've decided on one and they just want someone to tell them that's okay. Like they kind of know which one they want to do, but they're worried. It's all about the fear of making the wrong decision. And almost all of the time at the end of that, we go, yeah, you should do the one you want to do. Unless it is with a for-profit company and it's an unpaid internship, then take the one that has a paycheck because your labor is worth something. So do you have any information about the MET program, particularly the BioE plus business section? Yes, so I'm familiar with that. It's mostly direct admits to that program. So I'm not sure if you have been directly admitted or not. I don't know if they're doing transfers into that program.
They are.
Oh, they are, okay.
Yeah, they just opened it up.
They just opened it up. If you're interested in that, that is for people that have a lot of credit coming in or are ready to do some 21 unit semesters. It is very much taking 2 majors in 4 years. My main thing about double majoring or simultaneous majors, if I will say this very specifically, if you are applying to graduate school, right? And then there's 2 versions of you. There's a version of you that has the MET and no research because they were taking 20 units every semester, versus a version of you that has 1 degree, letters from people that you did research or internships from, and maybe took some business courses because you're interested. I will go with that second person every time, right? Because they've done more than just 2 classes. MET is a great program, but if you look at it and go, I will never have time to like engage with professors because I'm only going to be taking courses, I would encourage you not to do it. If, on the other hand, you come in, you've got a bunch of units and you're like, I looked at my 4 years, yeah, I could definitely do this and also do an internship or work during the summer or do this, then go for it, right? But that's my main advice. Is it possible for BioEs to complete a simultaneous degree? Yeah, MET is actually just a streamlined version of those. You can do simultaneous degrees. Same advice, right? Simultaneous degrees are different because the rules, it depends on who you're doing a simultaneous degree with. like an MCB BioE simultaneous degree looks very different from a music BioE degree, because music has different requirements and they mesh differently. Like different colleges have different rules, like the College of Engineering, the College of Letters and Sciences, etc. So if you're interested in a simultaneous major, you got to go to their webpage and then look at the requirements you'd have to fill out for their degree, the requirements you have to fill out for the BioE degree. And then I would urge you to just rough out, like, where would I put those classes in the next 4 years, and see if it feels possible to you. And we can help with that, obviously. Simultaneous degrees or MET, you know, once you've done that work, if you want to have an advising appointment and go, here's what would be my next 4 years if I did this. Should I do this? We're happy to have that conversation. If you have any other questions, I think we're caught up. You can do a hand up too.
I'm just inserting into the chat a very helpful resource that might be of use when you're planning your future semesters. This is the in-house multi-year teaching plan. We update it a couple times a semester as often as we can, and it shows what's being offered this semester, the next, and the few semesters following. So yeah, for all my planners out there, that's a big help.
What are mentee to mentorship opportunities? So there's a wide variety of them. I would say that the most common version of that is doing undergraduate research in someone's lab for units, right? Like that in terms of faculty. Also, if you work in someone's lab, you'll get mentorship from their graduate students and their postdocs, basically other members of the lab. There are some events run with BMES, and actually most of the student groups do something like this, where you can connect to mentors in their junior and senior year, and they can kind of talk to you about, you know, the sorts of things that they wish they'd known in their first year, what, if they're planning to go to med school, what that looks like, if they're planning to go to graduate school, what that looks like, what, you know, applying for jobs in industry would look like. But I would say, you know, like mostly with faculty, it's taking a course with that faculty or working in their lab for units. And then a variety of ways to connect with graduate students and folks in their second 2 years, juniors and seniors, who are interested in mentoring people in their first 2 years. Oh, this is a great question. Do you recommend applying and doing research in our first year, or should we wait? You should wait, totally. Last time, I think that we've checked, the average BioE graduate has done 4 semesters of research or internship, including summers, right? Almost none of that is in the first year. It's, you know, like you're still taking the very fundamental courses, right? And most faculty will have wanted you to, you know, got through a lot of those before you join the lab. I would urge people to spend their second semester in the freshman year figuring out who they want to apply to, who they want to ask, right? And to make that list at least 4 or 5 people. And the reason for that is that you get a couple of no's that have nothing to do with you, right? There'll be a faculty member and they'll go, you look great, but all of my students are either new or graduating, right? If they're graduating, they don't need assistance. They're just writing their thesis. And if they're new, they're not ready to mentor an undergraduate. So, like there'll be, or just like, I have no projects open right now. They're all staffed. So I usually tell people to spend the second semester freshman year, figure out who they might want to work with. And uh, uh, and then starting to have those conversations before the third semester starts, right? So like start research sometime in the sophomore year. If you start in the middle of the semester, like if you get a position in week 8, they'll very often say, let's just make this, pure voluntary, and we'll do units next semester if you continue. Like that's totally normal. There's also summer research programs called REU, Research Experience with Undergraduates. These are funded by the NSF, and you apply to them, and they fly you out to another university where you work for, it's usually 8, sometimes 9 or 10 weeks during the summer. They put you up in an empty dorm, and you just work 40-hour weeks on research. Those are great opportunities. People apply to those and get them all the time. Very rarely in their freshman summer. It's really mostly sophomore and junior summers. But those are to keep in mind as research opportunities as well. It's also just kind of nice. You get to see what another university does, right? Like what their approach is. Is it possible to apply for research during the winter vacation? Practically no. I mean, there may be somebody who is going to be willing to do mentorship over the winter vacation, but like most of us are off during that time. And I would fully expect if you email a bunch of people over winter vacation to get answers the second week of January. What's the best way to apply for research opportunities? Go to office hours. If you send an email and you don't get a response, don't take it personally. Faculty get truly redonkulous amounts of email, and it's very easy for us to miss something like that. Go to office hours and express your interest. A piece of advice is to have a resume handy, but also a schedule for your semester. They don't care what classes you're taking necessarily, that may come up. They want to know what days you're free. Like could you work Tuesdays and Thursdays? Because they're going to try and pair you with a graduate student. You can also knock on the door of their lab and just tell the graduate students and postdocs there that you're looking for a position. But can you go to a related question? Can you go to office hours of professors you don't have? Absolutely. My only advice would be, if you go to office hours for a professor that you don't have, and it's packed because it is the week before their midterm, just slowly back up and come back the next week. Because that office hour is probably going to be so busy that you won't really be able to make a connection. But most of the time, totally fine, right? Just we expect pop-ins from people that are not taking our courses. I'm just doing a pause so people can type or think. Maricela, any maybe parting words? If there's more questions, we'll take them, but otherwise, I don't want anyone to feel like they need to keep this, tab open out of politeness.
The only thing I would send you all off with is a really great big welcome. Welcome to campus and welcome to the start of your undergraduate careers with not only the university, but also with the department. Been getting a few messages from students wondering how they can schedule an appointment with me. And just to reiterate, it's as simple as sending me an email. what helps is if you were to include a few days and times when you have an open slot in your schedule so that I can check against my calendar and see if it works. Once we find a time that works for the both of us, we can, I'll send you an invite to a Zoom meeting. So that's how you can get in touch with me, bring in all your questions, and I will help you as best I can. But yeah, it was a pleasure having you all here. Thanks.
There are a couple of other questions. Would getting an internship in biostatistics or pharma be relevant to a resume in bioengineering? Yeah, absolutely. You know, if it is of interest, let me put this another way. I would say everybody that I have talked to who is currently working in bioengineering has done something that's not bioengineering at some point, right? Or something that's maybe on the edge of bioengineering, close to another discipline. It's totally normal. Lots of bioengineers go into pharma, not even biopharma, they go into pharma because there's a lot of biological tests that are involved in quality control and quality assurance, for example. There's lots of jobs there. The biostatistics, I mean, it's really, we do tons of statistics, and it is a skill set that will be useful. Most skill sets will, right? So most of the time, if there's like two kinds of things, the one where like, I'm not sure if this is really bioengineering, it's probably fine, right? We're interested in that thing as well. Or there are things that are totally not bioengineering, and those are fine too, right? If you have an opportunity to do other things, please feel free to be a complete human being. That we have no problem with that. We had a graduate student that several years ago that co-published an award-winning translation of like a 17th century French book, right? And it was just based on his interests, right? And that is also valid. That's a valid use of your time. I'm told that my cat is very cute, and I just want to say that I agree. This is Henry. We have two. Harvey is somewhere, otherwise I would show you her as well. Those of you who are taking Bio 10 are going to see a lot of these cats because they usually like to jump on the desk during class. What are the best ways to gain experience in bioengineering when you have very limited experience? You all have very limited experience, right? I'm not knocking any of you. You just do. Like, that's why you're here. The best ways to gain experience in bioengineering is to talk to and work with bioengineers. That is the main mission of the university, as I will probably also say in Bio 10. All the stuff that I teach is in books, right? Like, if you wanted to replace the content part of the degree with a library card, you absolutely could. What we offer is curation and community. Like, that is a university. I'm not just going, here's a bunch of stuff you don't know. I'm saying, here are things that you might not yet know, and here's how they intercorrelate, and here's how together this, and this, and this can be used to solve a particular kind of problem. Like that's the curation. The community is, it's just easier and better to learn stuff when you are working with other people who either know that stuff or are learning that stuff as well, right? So that is the best way to go forward. What advice would you give to students that are still exploring their passion and aren't exactly sure which engineering discipline to pursue? Are there specific resources you'd recommend? So I think a good way to do this is to look and see if those disciplines have a seminar as well, like the BioE 25. So if they have a 1-unit seminar, sign up for it. The 1-unit seminars are not high workload. It's really just showing up and listening for the most part. I mean, I'm sure there might be some that have a workload. The thing that I would focus on is not like, I really liked this course, right? I like, some people will, it's like, I took a circuits course. I really like circuits. I'm like, I guarantee you that in 25 years, the thing that gets you out of bed in the morning to go to work is not another day of Kirchhoff's current laws. No, that is not the way it works. What is going to get you out of bed is, I want to be part of solving these problems. So look at the kinds of problems that the discipline solves and decide what you're passionate about. Like, what gets you out of bed in the morning is, when I retire, I will be able to look back on my career and go, I was part of fixing this thing. I was part of understanding this better. I was part of solving this problem. So that, I think, is consistently the best way to figure out what you want to do. A class is a small part of a thing that you will sometimes do in that discipline, and that's important. You know, like, some people just like the day-to-day of programming more than they like the day-to-day of pipetting, right? And doing chemistry, and that's fine. That should be part of your decision. But I think most students sort of overestimate the importance of it in terms of, but why am I doing this thing? Where do we find internship opportunities in bioengineering? Really briefly, because I said a little bit about this and it'll be in the recording. Internship opportunities, they come from all different kinds of places. So internships specifically in industry, we will send out emails when we find one, right? So when we send the all undergraduate emails, those will very often include, these 4 companies have internship programs. Here are the links. There may be others out there that we are unaware of. We're usually pretty good at covering the Bay Area, but there may be other ones to look for too. Startups don't do this. So a startup is really just knocking on a door, knowing somebody, because they're very small. They're not really sending out big email blasts. Research internships are through summer REU programs that you apply for through the NSF and the university hosting them, or volunteer research in labs, which you get from knocking on office hour doors for the most part.
I'm muted. I just also wanted to add that with those announcements emails, those emails go directly to your berkeley.edu email address. So please continue to check them. And if you're able to on your Cal Central, if you don't mind that, setting your berkeley.edu email address as your primary email, that will help mitigate any lost messages, because whenever campus reaches out to students, it's always through that official berkeley.edu address. So just a little tidbit, check your emails.
Yeah, so we always have a number of students that are just not emailers. They use other, they're like, I use Discord, right? Which is fine. You got to check your email. Sorry, it is the way that B Courses communicates with you. And when I send out an announcement, it will go to your berkeley.edu address, unless you've set in Cal Central otherwise, which I would not encourage you to do, mostly because when you're logged into berkeley.edu, you have access to things that you don't if you're logged into another Gmail account. But it is important to note. It's pretty rare now, but like end of semester, I'll have a student, it will come in like week 10 and go, I haven't been checking my berkeley.edu, and I noticed you sent 23 emails regarding, previous homeworks and whatnot. And I'm like, yes, I did. I'm sorry. There's nothing I can do at this point. Oh, Joey, hello, by the way. is also noting other places where internships and job opportunities are listed. Thank you. All right. If there aren't any other questions, I'm going to wrap up. So here's my last spiel. I've most of my spiel you've already heard. I kind of inserted it into the answers to questions, whether or not they were entirely relevant. But I will note one other thing. So all of you are here because you have performed very well in math and science. I think that's probably an unambiguously true statement, right? And if you are like me and the other 3,000 students that I've taught in my career, ballpark, you're coming into Berkeley with that being a large part of your identity, right? Like, I'm the student that's good at math and science. Everybody is good at math and science. We're all good at math and science. And that's kind of terrifying because we're used to being the one that people go to, right? Or one of the people that people go to. And now we will be one of many, right? This is terrifying. And it can be deeply unpleasant because it feels like, like you're losing a part of your identity. The reality is that you are deepening a part of your identity, right? All of you are going to go do different things. And being, the student who's good at math and science is meaningless at this point. We've all seen TV shows, especially crime shows for whatever reason, where there's like the science character. And somehow that person knows astrophysics and botany and geology and programming. And that's no one. No one actually functions like that. All of you are going to deepen that identity that you have. Like, I'm going to be the person, not to, I'm good at math and science. I solved this problem. I'm very good at this. I'm not so good at these other things. Other people around me are much better at that thing. And through that deepening process, you will get better at the things that you choose to deepen because you're surrounded by people that are also really good, right? The part where this becomes really important is and I mean this sincerely, after a lot of soul searching and not always finding it pleasant, I would much rather be the worst, least experienced engineer on a team that's working on a really important problem than the best, fanciest engineer on a team that's not working on an important problem. Because being the fanciest, best engineer on a team, all that gets me is feeling smart. And that is not clean burning fuel. You will get sick of that after a while. The other team, I'm going to learn so much more because I am surrounded by people that know stuff that I don't, that I can learn from, right? And that are working on something that everybody is genuinely enthused about pursuing. It doesn't always feel good and it will feel different, right? But that is how you get really good. You want to be working with a team that is going to push you and has stuff to teach you. And that is what we want this environment to be. We want to be able to collaborate, support one another doing different things. I've talked a lot about why bioengineering is important. You know what also is important? French, literature, philosophy, mechanical engineering. All those things are important. They're trying to solve problems too. Mechanical engineering is trying to build better wind farms, right? Literature is trying to understand the human condition. Philosophy is trying to inform our choices about good and evil. And all of these are things that you will engage in, through your history and social science courses, but also just through your life, right? We're all working on important stuff. Don't be snobs, right? There is a tendency to just like hold on to that self-importance by like, well, yeah, but what I do is really important. What other people isn't. And that is really just weaponized insecurity. It is extremely tedious and it will prevent you from getting invited to the right parties. Except that everybody around you is moving in a bunch of different directions, doing a lot of interesting things, some of which you can support, while you're doing things that other people can support you, maybe in ways that you didn't even know that they could. And you will get so much more out of Berkeley by engaging with that network of points of view, of knowledge, of interest, of aesthetic choice, right? Like just the stuff that they like and the stuff that they don't. Then just trying to come in and go, I'm going to be the best. I'm going to get the highest number on things. I'm going to always get the highest number. And when I'm not getting the highest number, I'm going to hide, right? That is the student, not just what doesn't do as well. They just don't get as much out of this thing that we're doing. So welcome. Occasionally it's going to be hard. It will almost always be interesting. Sometimes it will be a little tedious, but it will all be in the service of preparing you to do things that you can't do right now. And there are things that need to be done. So good luck.
Thank you guys
Go
for
Bears.
coming.